everyone else there in her own party, so you can't isolate her. You know?
What about the family? ¿Qué tal, Germán?
Hola.
¿Qué ha pasado con lo de México?
No, esta monada no va a salir.
¿No va a salir?
No creo que salga.
Vaya.
Que...
Es que tenía unas semanas de locos, no te he visto
¿sí?
nada. Sí, porque he estado con... Hemos empezado con la campaña. Me voy a volver a comer la campaña, no puedo con mi alma, no puedo con mi alma. Pero bueno, a ver si nos vemos con calma. ¿Estás por aquí estos días o te vas?
No, estoy aquí.
Sí, porque yo me quedo... Bueno, si no salimos del todo tarde, sí, fenomenal. Yo iba a preguntar.
Hey, das funktioniert. Can we start, please? Ich muss noch was sagen.
Por favor.
Ay, muchísimas gracias.
De nada.
Hello.
I had to find my blood.
Il Presidente.
Bonjour. Buongiorno, apriamo la seduta. C'était avec beaucoup d'émotion que j'ai appris le décès de M. Jacques Chirac. Président de la République française, homme attaché à son pays, à la ville de Paris, il était aussi un grand Européen. Eurodéputé de la première heure, il a toujours prôné la paix, la tolérance et la démocratie, valeurs fondatrices de l'Europe. Toutes nos sympathies vont à sa famille et au peuple français. Je souhaiterais que le Parlement lui rende hommage. Vorrei intervenire brevemente anche per ricordare coloro che hanno perso la vita nel recente naufragio vicino alle coste di Lampedusa. Siamo all'ennesimo naufragio. Mi piacerebbe, ma so che è anche il vostro sentimento, non dover più intervenire in quest'Aula per parlare delle morti nel Mediterraneo, ma solo per discutere di misure concrete per porre fine a questa drammatica situazione. Vorrei con voi essere vicini alla polizia tedesca, al popolo tedesco, alla comunità ebraica tedesca. La polizia tedesca conferma che almeno 2 persone sono state uccise oggi ad Halle, una delle più importanti città della Sassonia nell'est del paese, e che l'aggressore è in fuga. La situazione non è ancora chiara, i nostri pensieri sono con le famiglie, gli amici delle vittime e i cittadini tedeschi. Per questi motivi vi invito a un minuto di silenzio. Grazie. Buona. Il processo verbale e i testi approvati dalla seduta del 19 settembre 2019 sono disponibili. Vi sono osservazioni? Se non vi sono osservazioni, prego, onorevole Fest. No. Chi è?
Aby k bodu 4 situace v severní Sýrii byla přijata rezoluce, která by mohla být hlasována na 2. říjnové plenární schůzi.
Grazie. Allora non vi sono osservazioni al processo verbale, i testi approvati e il processo verbale è approvato. Alcuni annunci: i gruppi PPE, SD e Renew e ID mi hanno comunicato alcune decisioni di modifiche relativamente alle nomine nelle delegazioni. Queste decisioni saranno incluse nel verbale della seduta odierna e entreranno in vigore alla data del presente annuncio. Diverse commissioni, Econ, ITRE, Tran, Envi, Libe, Regi, Empl, Cont, Inco, Afet e Deve hanno deciso di avviare negoziati interistituzionali prima della prima lettura del Consiglio a norma dell'articolo 72 del regolamento. Tutte le 43 posizioni adottate dal Parlamento in prima lettura che costituiscono il mandato per tali negoziati sono disponibili nella pagina web della plenaria e i titoli saranno pubblicati nel processo verbale della seduta. A seguito della consultazione prevista dall'articolo 234 del regolamento finanziario, la Commissione per gli affari esteri e la Commissione per i bilanci mi hanno trasmesso la loro posizione comune sulla proroga del Fondo fiduciario regionale dell'Unione Europea in risposta alla crisi siriana, istituito con decisione della Commissione del 15 dicembre 2014 e che scade il 14 dicembre 2019. La posizione comune è disponibile sul sito web della plenaria e sarà pubblicata nel processo verbale della seduta odierna. Se entro 24 ore non vengono sollevate obiezioni da parte di un gruppo politico o di un numero di deputati pari almeno alla soglia minima, trasmetterò formalmente questa posizione comune alla Commissione europea. Altra comunicazione: le commissioni competenti hanno trasmesso 10 rettifiche a testi approvati dal Parlamento, conformemente all'articolo 241 paragrafo 4 del regolamento. Tali rettifiche si considerano approvate a meno che, entro 24 ore dall'annuncio, un gruppo politico o un numero di deputati pari almeno alla soglia bassa che chiedono che sia messa ai voti. Le rettifiche sono disponibili sul sito web della plenaria e i loro titoli saranno pubblicati nel processo verbale della presente seduta. Ultimo annuncio, firma di atti adottati nel quadro della procedura legislativa ordinaria. Vorrei informare l'Aula che giovedì firmerò insieme al Presidente del Consiglio un atto nel quadro della procedura legislativa ordinaria conformemente all'articolo 78 del regolamento del Parlamento. Il titolo di tale atto sarà pubblicato nel processo verbale della presente seduta. Passiamo ora all'ordine del giorno. Il progetto definitivo di ordine del giorno fissato dalla Conferenza dei Presidenti giovedì 19 settembre a norma dell'articolo 157 vi è stato distribuito. Vi sono alcune richieste di modifica. Ho ricevuto una richiesta di procedura d'urgenza a norma dell'articolo 163 del regolamento. La richiesta è stata presentata dalla Commissione per i trasporti e il turismo e riguarda la proposta di regolamento per garantire i collegamenti di base per il trasporto di merci su strada e la connettività aerea, i periodi di applicazione. La votazione su tale richiesta si terrà domani, giovedì 10 ottobre, all'inizio del turno di votazione. Altra richiesta. A seguito di consultazioni con i gruppi politici, desidero sottoporre all'Aula le seguenti proposte di modifica del progetto definitivo di ordine del giorno. Mercoledì. Le dichiarazioni del Consiglio e della Commissione sul quadro finanziario pluriennale 21-27, risorse proprie e il momento di rispondere alle attese dei cittadini, sono spostate come primo punto a giovedì mattina. Tali dichiarazioni sono sostituite dalla dichiarazione della Commissione sull'ecologizzazione della Banca Europea per gli investimenti, spostata a da giovedì a mercoledì. È aggiunta come terzo punto, sempre di mercoledì, una dichiarazione della Commissione relativa alle tariffe statunitensi sulle merci europee, a seguito della decisione dell'OMC sulla controversia Airbus. Altra modifica, sempre di mercoledì, è aggiunta come quarto punto una dichiarazione del vicepresidente della Commissione Alto Rappresentante per l'Unione per gli affari esteri e la sicurezza sulla situazione nella Siria settentrionale. Per quanto riguarda giovedì, le dichiarazioni del Consiglio e della Commissione sul quadro finanziario pluriennale 21-27, risorse proprie, sono spostate come primo punto a giovedì mattina. Altra modifica, la relazione dell'onorevole Delange sulle politiche economiche della zona euro nel 2019 è cancellata dall'ordine del giorno. Inoltre, 5 obiezioni a norma dell'articolo 112 del regolamento sono state approvate dalla Commissione ENVI e saranno aggiunte direttamente alle votazioni. Sostanze attive compreso il clorotoluron, gran turco geneticamente modificato, soia geneticamente modificata, gran turco geneticamente modificato, eccetera. Su tutto questo, su queste modifiche, vi sono obiezioni? Prego.
Take this up. Thank you, Mr. President. Together with our co-objector, we believe that it's the right time for a debate on authorizations of GMOs. As some colleagues will know, in its last term, Parliament adopted...
Punto successivo.
Ok, grazie,
ecco.
Sorry.
No, perché siccome è già complicato qui, allora... Su tutto quello che abbiamo detto vi sono obiezioni? Perché se non vi sono obiezioni, queste modifiche che vi ho proposto e che sono state proposte dai gruppi politici sono approvate. Per quanto riguarda mercoledì, il gruppo Verdi ha chiesto che venga aggiunta una dichiarazione della Commissione sull'autorizzazione degli OGM come ultimo punto nel pomeriggio, prima degli interventi di 1 minuto. Do la parola all'onorevole Metz per presentare la richiesta a nome del gruppo dei Verdi. Prego, onorevole.
Mille grazie. Thank you, Mr. President, and sorry for starting too early then. Together with our co-objector, I start again. We believe that it's the right time for a debate on authorizations of GMOs. As some colleagues will know, in its last time, Parliament adopted 36 objections to GMOs authorizations. The resolutions outline concerned we have around health risk due to gaps in safety assessment, and they also highlighted the Commission's lack of respect for democracy in the decision-making process. The Commission continues to authorise GMOs despite lack of support from Member States and the Parliament objections. Tomorrow, the Parliament will vote on 3 new objections, and the new Commission will shortly start his mandate. This is therefore a good moment for this new Parliament and the Commission to exchange views on this issue. I hope colleagues can support this request. Thank you very much.
Grazie onorevole Metz. C'è qualcuno che vuole intervenire per un intervento contrario? Allora la richiesta è messa ai voti per alzata di mano. Chi è d'accordo? Chi è favorevole? Chi è contrario? Chi si astiene? Approvata. È aggiunta una dichiarazione della Commissione sull'autorizzazione degli OGM come ultimo punto del pomeriggio, prima degli interventi di 1 minuto. Per quanto riguarda mercoledì, il gruppo GUE e il gruppo Verdi hanno chiesto che le dichiarazioni del Consiglio e della Commissione su come prevenire i conflitti di interesse nell'Unione Europea siano aggiunte come terzo punto nel pomeriggio, dopo la dichiarazione della Commissione sull'ecologizzazione della Banca Europea per gli investimenti. Do la parola all'onorevole Aubry per presentare la richiesta al nome del gruppo GUE. Prego.
Chers collègues, alors que s'achève la séquence d'audition des commissaires européens, qui, dans cet hémicycle, peut se satisfaire du bilan de la procédure d'examen des conflits d'intérêts? Qu'on le veuille ou non, le doute s'est installé. Il suffit pour cela de voir le nombre de questions émanant de tous les groupes politiques ici et qui ont été consacrées à l'éthique et l'intégrité pendant les auditions. L'expérience de ces 2 dernières semaines illustre toutes les failles de la procédure actuelle, qui manque cruellement de moyens, de temps et d'indépendance pour être suffisamment robuste et crédible. Alors que la confiance des citoyens européens dans leurs institutions s'effrite, il est temps de mettre en place les dispositifs à même de garantir pleinement l'intégrité de nos dirigeants européens. C'est pourquoi nous vous proposons un débat sur la prévention des conflits d'intérêts dans les institutions européennes. Ce moment d'échange, que nous proposons sans résolution à ce stade, pour obtenir le soutien le plus large possible de notre hémicycle, doit tous nous réunir. Le vote sur ce débat, que nous demandons avec un appel nominal, ajouté comme 3e point à l'agenda, est une chance unique de montrer aux citoyens que nous préférons l'éthique plutôt que le fric.
Grazie. C'è qualcuno che vuole intervenire perché non è d'accordo? Allora la richiesta è messa ai voti con votazione per appello nominale. Ah, c'è qualcuno? Ah, perdono. No, allora un attimo. Chi è che vuole intervenire? Melchior, onorevole Melchior. Prego.
Merci beaucoup. Et merci d'avoir cette opportunité de continuer un débat qu'on a eu dans le comité de jury pendant les dernières semaines. C'est un peu dommage qu'on va avoir un débat au plénière sans avoir vraiment le temps de regarder les substances dans les comités qui sont la maison pour les débats intensifs dans ce Parlement. Mais je suis volontaire pour avoir un débat au plénière et peut-être de continuer après avec un peu plus de substance dans le comité de jury où Madame Aubry elle y chaise aussi. Merci.
Va bene, grazie. La richiesta è messa ai voti con votazione per appello nominale. La votazione è aperta. La votazione è chiusa. Come si vede qui? Questo. Approvata. 398 favorevoli, 56 contrari, 25 astenuti. Quindi le dichiarazioni del Consiglio e della Commissione su prevenire i conflitti di interesse nell'Unione Europea sono aggiunte come terzo punto nel pomeriggio. Mercoledì il gruppo PPE ha chiesto che una dichiarazione della Commissione sulla lotta contro il cancro sia aggiunta come ultimo punto nel pomeriggio prima degli interventi di 1 minuto. La discussione si concluderà con una risoluzione che sarà votata domani. Do la parola all'onorevole Liese per presentare la richiesta del gruppo PPE. Prego.
Thank you, President. Dear colleagues, the intention of the EPP is that we establish a non-permanent committee on the fight against cancer. Cancer is a disease that still kills too many Europeans, and in the campaign we learned how important this issue is for our citizens, and we know that also the new Commission wants to make it a priority. Europe cannot solve the problem alone, but without Europe we will not solve the problem. And I ask you to support this request, especially as a coordinator of ENVI. ENVI is responsible for public health, but we have many other issues, for example, the Green Deal, and we need to work together with ITRE, EMPL and colleagues from other committees. That's why I think this non-permanent committee would be a good opportunity. I understood that some groups are not prepared to support the resolution this week because they need some fine-tuning on the text. So our compromise proposal is debate today, and then in 2 weeks' time we have the resolution for the exact mandate of this non-permanent committee. Please support us in the fight against cancer. Thank you very much.
Grazie. Ha chiesto la parola l'onorevole Guteland. Prego.
Tack, herr ordförande. Självklart stödjer vi från SOD-gruppen att vi ska göra allt vi kan för att bekämpa cancer. Vi vill inte att några familjer ska behöva gå igenom det lidande och den smärta som det innebär att se den man älskar bli sjuk och i värsta fall ryckas ifrån en. Vi är många som har upplevt detta, som har minnen av vad det innebär. Och vi tycker att det är viktigt att vi kan ta debatten om detta i plenaren och visa att vi vill göra det här arbetet grundligt. Däremot är det viktigt att separera frågan och se till att resolutionsarbetet görs på bästa möjliga sätt. Vi vill därför ha en separat votering om att vi ska ha debatten här i plenum, men vi ska göra resolutionen på rätt sätt. Och då vill jag säga till Peter Liese och EPP att göra det grundligt handlar om att gå tillbaks till miljöutskottet och hälsoutskottet och se till att ta fighten mot cancer där. Med alla de experter som finns, alla de medlemmar som har den kompetens som krävs, så är det där vi ska arbeta förebyggande mot cancer på bästa sätt. För det bästa sättet att bekämpa sjukdomarna är att förebygga de bakomliggande orsakerna till att människor blir sjuka. Och kollegor, det är viktigt att det här arbetet görs på rätt sätt. Europas medborgare förtjänar bara det bästa och alla i det här parlamentet har ansvar att göra det vi kan för att hjälpa till. Och då får det inte vara något hafsverk, det ska inte ske på fel nivå, det ska ske i envi och det ska ske tillsammans med alla de som har kompetensen att se till att vi arbetar med hur vi bäst förebygger dessa sjukdomar. Tack.
Grazie onorevole Guteland. Abbiamo ascoltato l'onorevole Liese. Io direi che il dibattito, di fare questa proposta, di votarla, il dibattito lo facciamo adesso e in una tornata successiva prepariamo il voto per la risoluzione. Credo che questo sia, diciamo, nello spirito dell'intervento di Liese e nello spirito dell'intervento di Guteland. Mettiamo ai voti per appello nominale questa proposta, dibattito subito e risoluzione a una tornata successiva. La votazione è aperta. No, appello nominale. Perfetto. Hanno votato tutti? La votazione è chiusa. Approvato. Quindi una dichiarazione della Commissione sulla lotta contro il cancro aggiunta come ultimo punto nel pomeriggio prima degli interventi di 1 minuto. La discussione si concluderà con una risoluzione che sarà votata in una tornata successiva. Mercoledì il gruppo ID ha chiesto che la Commissione sulla dichiarazione del vicepresidente della Commissione alto rappresentante sulla situazione nella Siria settentrionale si concluda con una risoluzione che sarà votata nella tornata di ottobre 2. Do la parola all'onorevole Ivan David per presentare la richiesta del gruppo ID. Prego.
Vzhledem k tomu, že v současné době dochází k agresivnímu jednání Turecka v oblasti severní Sýrie a vzhledem k tomu, že tuto situaci pokládáme za mimořádně vážnou a domníváme se, že Evropský parlament by se jí měl zabývat, navrhujeme, aby tento bod byl ukončen rezolucí, která by byla hlasována v druhém říjnovém plenárním zasedání.
Grazie onorevole David. Do la parola a... C'è un intervento contrario? Allora la richiesta è posta in votazione per alzata di mano. Chi è d'accordo alzi la mano. Chi è contrario? Facciamo un check senza vedere gli astenuti. La votazione è aperta. La votazione è chiusa. Quindi è respinta. È respinta. Quindi l'ordine del giorno rimane invariato. A seguito delle modifiche adottate in accordo con i gruppi politici propongo di estendere la seduta di oggi dalle ore 21 alle ore 23 perché abbiamo inserito nell'ordine del giorno molti dibattiti. Spero che non vi siano obiezioni, però se ci sono, no. Quindi tali modifiche sono approvate. Iniziamo con l'ordine del giorno. Do il benvenuto al Presidente Juncker, all'onorevole Barnier, alla Ministra finlandese. L'ordine del giorno reca le dichiarazioni del Consiglio e della Commissione. Onorevole Tomasic ha chiesto di parlare?
Jesam, hvala lijepa gospodine predsjedniče. Tegljač Bourbon Road u vlasništvu francuske brodarske kompanije potonuo je 26. rujna na Atlantiku, 2000 km od francuskog otoka Martinique. Rezultat dosadašnje potrage je pronalazak trojice preživjelih te tijela četvorice poginulih pomoraca. Još uvijek se traga za 7 pomoraca, uključujući i kapetana broda Dina Miškića. Ovim putem apeliram na čelnike svih 28 država članica Unije koji na bilo koji način mogu pomoći pri lociranju i spašavanju tih 7 pomoraca da to i učine. Sama bit Europske unije leži upravo u međusobnoj solidarnosti individualnih država članica koja ovoj zajednici i njenim građanima može ponuditi istinsku dodatnu vrijednost. Teško mi se pomiriti s objavom francuskog kriznog stožera Cross s Martinika da se od potrage odustalo s takvom lakoćom, posebice kada se zna da su neki ljudi spašeni čak nakon više od 50 dana na moru. Dragi kolegice i kolege, uvjerena sam u to da svaki od nas čak ni zamisliti ne može ovaj osjećaj.
Onorevole Tomasic, stiamo iniziando un dibattito. Stiamo iniziando un dibattito molto importante. Le comunicazioni, per cortesia, chiedete la parola prima, ma non quando già iniziato a discutere di un ordine del giorno. E io invito anche i colleghi che se ne stanno andando magari a rimanere un attimo perché questo dibattito è davvero importante. Stiamo parlando della preparazione della riunione del Consiglio europeo del 17 e 18 ottobre. Questo c'è bisogno di leggerlo, no? Ringrazio il Presidente Juncker, il signor Barnier e la Ministra Tuppurainen per essere presenti oggi con noi. Però ho bisogno anche di dirvi alcune di farvi alcune considerazioni, proprio in apertura di questo dibattito, perché, come sapete, ieri sono stato invitato dal Primo Ministro Johnson a Londra per un colloquio con lui. E ci tengo a informare l'Aula, perché ho portato al Premier Johnson la posizione che il Parlamento europeo ha votato nell'ultima plenaria sulla questione della Brexit. Nonostante una certa fiducia e speranza, ho dovuto constatare che non ci sono al momento molti progressi. Come è noto, qualsiasi accordo raggiunto tra Unione Europea e Regno Unito deve ottenere non solo il voto della Camera dei Comuni, ma anche l'approvazione del Parlamento europeo. Pertanto è fondamentale per il Primo Ministro conoscere la nostra posizione. E il nostro approccio è molto semplice. Pensiamo che una Brexit ordinata, un'uscita del Regno Unito con un accordo, sia di gran lunga il risultato migliore. Come ho spiegato al Primo Ministro Johnson, il Parlamento europeo non accetterà però un accordo a tutti i costi. Non accetteremo nulla che possa minare l'accordo del Venerdì Santo e il processo di pace o compromettere l'integrità del nostro mercato unico. Ciò che è stato ampiamente chiarito nella nostra risoluzione nel settembre scorso. Abbiamo esaminato le proposte presentate dal Regno Unito ultimamente come alternativa al backstop originale. La nostra valutazione al Premier Johnson è stata che esse non costituiscono al momento una base per poter arrivare ad un accordo. Sono delle idee, ma non sono delle proposte che sono attuabili, immediatamente attuabili. Ci sono due alternative a un accordo in questo momento: l'estensione o nessun accordo. Il Parlamento naturalmente è aperto alla possibilità di un'estensione qualora vi siano validi motivi o obiettivi precisi. Ma richiedere l'estensione è una responsabilità e una prerogativa del Regno Unito. Per quanto riguarda l'ipotesi di mancato accordo, sono stato molto chiaro sul fatto che si tratterebbe di un risultato fortemente negativo. Comporterebbe serie conseguenze economiche per entrambe le parti, ma in particolare per il Regno Unito e i suoi cittadini. Un mancato accordo sarebbe chiaramente però responsabilità del governo britannico. Quanto ai cittadini, ho ribadito al Premier Johnson che il Parlamento europeo continuerà a garantire che i loro diritti vengano tutelati, qualsiasi scenario si produca. Stamani ho anche avuto un proficuo incontro con lo Speaker della Camera dei Comuni, John Bercow. Gli ho espresso la mia visione sul fatto che un'eventuale richiesta da parte delle istituzioni del Regno Unito di estensione del termine di recesso dovrebbe servire a ridare la parola ai cittadini britannici, come ha detto quest'Aula, tramite referendum o elezioni generali. Con John Bercow c'è stata piena consonanza sull'importanza del ruolo dei nostri parlamenti nella gestione della Brexit. E vi è la comune consapevolezza che un'uscita disordinata del Regno Unito dall'Unione Europea sarebbe contro gli interessi dei cittadini britannici ed europei. Spero vivamente che un'uscita senza accordo alla fine venga evitata, anche se in tal caso l'Unione Europea ha adottato tutte le misure necessarie per prepararsi e affrontare le conseguenze. Do subito la parola all'onorevole ministro Tuppurainen a nome del Consiglio. Grazie.
Grazie, President. Honourable members of the Parliament, next week's Council comes at a crucial point. At the upcoming European Council meeting, leaders will be discussing some of the most pressing issues for the Union. Let me start with the multi-annual financial framework, MFF, on which the leaders will have the first substantial discussion. You will recall that the June European Council conclusions expressed the ambition to aim for an agreement before the end of the year. The Presidency has pursued work in line with that ambition. During the past months, we have consulted and had extensive discussions with Member States in order to identify their priorities and where the so-called room for negotiation lies. We have now prepared a Presidency paper to frame discussions at the October European Council. I believe it will be a good starting point for the leaders to provide further strategic guidance and indications for the Presidency's MFF work. The European Council will also discuss the strategic agenda, which leaders adopted in June. After 4 months, they are keen to know how it's been implemented within the Council, but also crucially, how it is reflected in the future work of the other institutions, particularly in the Commission work programme. This is why Commission President-elect Ursula von der Leyen will attend the European Council and expand on this point with leaders. It is reassuring to see the largely similar objectives of the strategic agenda and Mrs von der Leyen's political guidelines. Of course, the exchange of views between the leaders and the President of the European Parliament will also be the perfect opportunity to hear the views of the Parliament. Beyond the discussion on the strategic agenda, leaders on this occasion will also formally appoint Christine Lagarde as the President of the European Central Bank. Now, the next topical issue on the agenda is the climate change, an existential threat that has been and still is at the centre of attention, not least after discussions in New York. We, as a union, need to help raise global ambition and continue to lead the way on climate action. This is because we may soon reach a tipping point where we can only mitigate the effects of climate change instead of reversing them. But it is only with concerted global efforts that we can successfully tackle this global phenomenon. So at the meeting in October, leaders will focus on the international aspects of climate change. They will discuss the outcome of the United Nations efforts at the Climate Summit in New York, and they will prepare for the upcoming COP25 in Santiago de Chile in December. I cannot exclude, however, that during the discussion, leaders may touch upon the EU's climate objectives too. Under external relations, it is likely that the leaders will discuss Turkey in light of its continued drilling activities in the Eastern Mediterranean and take into account also the broader EU-Turkey relations, including cooperation in migration. The recent developments related to Syria are likely to come up in this context as well, and we've just received very worrisome news today. Leaders will also discuss enlargement, where the General Affairs Council discussions on the 15th of October will be crucial in relation to Albania and North Macedonia. And honourable members, finally, Brexit is an issue that is likely to steal the limelight. As you know, on 2nd October, the UK submitted proposals to overcome the extremely thorny backstop issue. These proposals do not yet provide a basis for concluding an agreement, but the EU remains fully committed to work with the UK and avoid a no-deal Brexit. Although we are prepared to face it, it would be irresponsible for both sides to ever claim that a no-deal scenario is an attractive option. This would have serious consequences on our borders, our customs, our trade, on our citizens' rights, all fundamental issues for both the EU and the UK. And yet, the UK crashing out is a dangerously realistic scenario. Given the constantly evolving situation, leaders will have to take stock of the very latest developments and decide how to best proceed. So thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward to our discussions.
Grazie signora Ministro. E adesso la parola al Presidente della Commissione Juncker. Prego.
Signor Presidente, Madam Chair of the Council, meine sehr verehrten Damen und Herren Abgeordnete, ich fasse mich kurz, weil wir sind relativ spät in die Gänge gekommen heute Nachmittag. Und die Frau Ratspräsidentin hat Wesentliches zu der Tagesordnung des Europäischen Rates gesagt. Deshalb macht das keinen Sinn, sich hier in überflüssigen Wiederholungen zu ergehen. Als ich vor 5 Jahren hier antrat, habe ich ein Versprechen abgegeben. Und das Versprechen war, dass die Kommission bis zum letzten Moment versuchen wird, konkrete Ergebnisse im Interesse der europäischen Bürger vorzulegen. Ich stehe zu diesem Versprechen und ich hoffe, dass der Europäische Rat und der Ministerrat dies auch tun, weil die beiden haben ein ähnliches, wenn nicht sogar dasselbe Versprechen abgegeben und vieles, was auf dem Tisch des Hauses liegt, des Rates, teilweise des Parlaments, muss in Angriff genommen werden. Wir müssen jetzt die Grundlagen für ein stabiles, handlungsfähiges Europa der kommenden Jahre legen. Und dies setzt voraus, dass wir dringend die Verhandlungen zum mehrjährigen Finanzrahmen voranbringen, ja abschließen. Dies setzt voraus, dass wir uns mit aller Entschlossenheit im Kampf gegen den Klimawandel bewähren. Und dies setzt voraus, dass wir uns um die Stabilität unserer Region und darüber hinaus einsetzen. Wichtig ist, sehr wichtig ist, eine Einigung über den mehrjährigen Finanzrahmen. Der Gipfel nächste Woche muss hier wirklich wesentliche Fortschritte erzielen, weil die Menschen in Europa müssen sich auf die politische Führung der Europäischen Union verlassen können. Ich bin missvergnügt, wenn ich dieses Geplänkel zwischen Mitgliedstaaten und Kommission, zwischen Mitgliedstaaten, Kommission und Parlament beobachte. Wir sind nicht auf der Höhe unserer Aufgabe. Wir sollen jetzt weniger reden und endlich zu Beschlüssen kommen, weil es kommt sehr darauf an, dass wir sicherstellen, dass europäische Forscher ihre Projekte fortsetzen können. Es kommt darauf an, dass junge Menschen ihr Erasmus-Jahr pünktlich starten können. Und es kommt darauf an, dass die geplanten Infrastrukturprojekte vorankommen. Deshalb müssen wir das Budget, den budgetären Rahmen, schnell beschließen. Die Kommission hat relativ früh, meine Erinnerung sagt mir, dass dies im März, April, Mai 2018 war, ihre Vorschläge zur mehrjährigen Finanzplanung vorgelegt. 1,5 Jahre Debatte ohne erkennbare Fortschritte. Wir haben nicht noch einmal 1,5 Jahre Zeit, wenn wir nicht zu Potte kommen. Vor Ende dieses Jahres, spätestens Anfang nächsten Jahres, dann wird es nicht möglich sein, die Projekte, die Programme, die Absichten, die Initiativen, die geplant sind, in die Tat umzusetzen. Machen wir nicht noch einmal den Fehler, den wir bei der letzten mehrjährigen Finanzplanung gemacht haben, wo wir gebraucht haben, bis zu einem Monat vor Inkrafttreten des Finanzrahmens, uns zu einigen, was zur Folge hatte, dass wir 2 wertvolle Jahre verloren haben, von 14 bis 16, um das zu tun, was wir den Menschen versprochen hatten. Es reicht jetzt. Wir müssen uns beeilen, weil es geht nicht um uns, es geht nicht um die Institutionen, sondern es geht um die Menschen in Europa. Ähnliches gilt für die Herausforderungen, die im direkten Zusammenhang mit der Migrationsproblematik stehen. Auch hier hatte die Kommission 2015 im Frühjahr Vorschläge vorgelegt. Die wurden mit qualifizierter Mehrheit im Rat angenommen, die werden aber nicht umgesetzt. Ich hätte gerne, dass der Europäische Rat sich diesem Thema wieder voll zuwendet und dafür sorgt, dass hier Fortschritte erzielt werden. Migration ist wichtig, der Haushaltsrahmen ist auch wichtig. Ich sage hier, was ich gestern gesagt habe und was ich übermorgen wiederholen werde, also solange ich hier noch rumspucken kann. Wer denkt, dass europäische Aufgaben der Zukunft innerhalb eines Finanzrahmens von 1% des kollektiven Reichtums der Europäischen Union erledigt werden können, irrt sich fundamental. Ich sage dies dem Parlament, ich sage dies dem Ratsvorsitz und ich werde dies auch dem Europäischen Rat noch einmal eindringlich in den Hörkanal einfließen lassen. Monsieur le Président, il est évident que le changement climatique est un des défis majeurs qui nous attendent. Nous avons été, nous sommes la première grande économie au monde à nous être engagés au titre de l'accord de Paris qui n'aurait pas vu le jour sans l'Union européenne. Il faut maintenant mettre en place un cadre législatif, des règles et pas seulement des mots, afin d'atteindre tous les objectifs renfermés dans l'accord de Paris en stimulant les investissements et la justice sociale, qui n'est pas le moindre des problèmes dans les secteurs en transition. Il est évident que la neutralité climatique doit être atteinte au plus tard en 2050. Il est non moins évident que la transition mondiale pour atteindre les objectifs des accords de Paris doit s'accélérer. C'est dans cet esprit que les multiples accords commerciaux de l'Union européenne que nous avons conclus ces dernières années et qui sont juridiquement contraignants continueront de contenir des engagements spécifiques sur la mise en œuvre de l'accord de Paris, à l'instar de notre accord avec le Japon et aussi de l'accord paraphé avec le Mercosur qui ne trahit pas les objectifs des accords de Paris. Et même si on peut douter de la bonne volonté de ceux qui sont supposés les mettre en œuvre, il reste que pour la première fois dans l'histoire de l'Union européenne et pour la première fois dans l'histoire des accords commerciaux, nous avons insisté et sur des normes environnementales et sur des normes sociales. Et donc, nous avons un instrument que nous pouvons actionner pour amener ceux qui sont plus récalcitrants et plus réticents de faire ce qu'ils ont promis de faire. Je dirais, Monsieur le Président, un ou deux mots sur l'élargissement. J'avais dit en début de mandat que pendant la durée de ce mandat, il n'y aurait pas de nouvel élargissement ni de nouvelle adhésion. Certains d'entre vous en étaient tristes et dans la région, notamment des Balkans occidentaux, l'ire était grande. Mais il était évident, si on voulait s'exprimer d'une façon responsable, qu'il fallait s'exprimer d'une façon sincère. Il était évident, obvious, qu'il n'y aurait pas d'élargissement pendant les 5 années entre 2014 et 2019. Mais s'il est exact, juste et justifié d'être sincère, il faut aussi être sincère à l'égard de ceux qui veulent adhérer. La Macédoine du Nord et l'Albanie ont fait des progrès substantiels. Et c'est la raison pour laquelle le président Sassoli, le président Tusk, la présidente élue von der Leyen et moi-même, nous avons écrit une lettre aux États membres pour les inviter à faire ce qu'ils ont promis aux pays des Balkans occidentaux et notamment à la Macédoine du Nord et à l'Albanie. Si l'Europe se dote d'une volonté forte, il y a toujours un chemin pour arriver aux objectifs communément admis. Je prends pour exemple l'accord de Prespa entre la Macédoine du Nord et la Grèce. Le cadre européen et la perspective européenne ont permis de faire en sorte qu'un conflit lourd de plusieurs décennies ait enfin pu être réglé. Et les réformes que l'Albanie, avec courage, a entreprises nous permettent d'envisager d'une façon favorable, non pas généreuse, mais favorable, l'ouverture des négociations et avec l'Albanie et également, je le disais, avec la Macédoine du Nord. Mais l'élargissement n'est pas une fin en soi. Il ne suffit pas d'élargir. Il ne suffit pas d'élargir à gogo. Élargir, élargir, élargir. Non. Il s'agit aussi d'approfondir la construction européenne en prenant appui sur les valeurs qui nous sont communes et qu'il ne faut pas délasser au moment d'adhérer à l'Union européenne. I would like to add a word on Turkey, which is characterized by relations with the European Union which are as complex and as important as ever. Turkey is, of course, a key partner for the European Union, not least when it comes to cooperation on migration. My full commitment, and the one of the Commission, and hopefully the one of our Union, to the implementation of the EU-Turkey Statement of 2016 remains clear. The facility for refugees in Turkey continues to deliver concrete results on the ground, and this should not be forgotten. There are other issues on which I cannot be so complimentary. When it comes to Turkey's illegal drilling operations in the Eastern Mediterranean, I have to repeat that in this respect, in others too, but mainly in this respect, I'm a Cypriot, and I will remain in full solidarity with Cyprus. Turkey has security concerns at its border with Syria. However, I call on Turkey, as well on the other actors, to act with restraint and to stop operations already, as we are speaking, underway. This military action is not leading to good results, and we have to bring this to the attention of our Turkish friends. And I have to say, if the Turkish plan involves the creation of a so-called safe zone, don't expect the European Union to pay for any of it. A sustainable solution to the Syrian conflict can only be reached through a genuine political transition. President, dear honourable members, as the European Union moves forward, we must also deal with the departure of a member state. That was the choice of the British people, not the choice of the European Union, although we are respecting that choice. As it stands, we remain in discussion with the United Kingdom on the terms of its departure. And personally, I don't exclude a deal. We are, Michel and myself, working on a deal. And we are not accepting this blame game which started in London. We have not to be blamed. But we'll see in the next coming days how things will develop. My friend Michel Barnier will elaborate on this. I would like to repeat to the attention of our British friends that there is not only a parliament in Westminster which has to agree. There is a parliament here Without the agreement of the European Parliament, nothing will be possible. I promised to be brief. As always, I didn't keep my promises.
Grazie, Presidente Juncker.
Thank you, Mr. Juncker, President of the Commission. Now, Mr. Barnier, you have the floor.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, President, Madam Minister, ladies and gentlemen, members of Parliament. I will just add to what Mr. Juncker, President Juncker, has said. The British negotiators passed on their proposals to us. They have a competent and professional team. I think it's important to make that point. They have explained the situation to us. They have clarified a number of points. We have asked a lot of questions in the technical meetings that have been going on for the last few days. To put things very frankly, though, and to try and be objective, at this particular point, we are not really in a position where we are able to find an agreement. As you have said, President Sassoli, in a very clear and forceful way, on behalf of the Parliament to Prime Minister Johnson. The thing is, though, time is pressing. We are 1 week away from the European Council summit and just a few days away from the date of October 31st, which was agreed with the previous government to be the exit date of the UK from the EU in an orderly manner, which, as you have said, is much better than a disorderly exit. Now, why are we not in a position to reach a deal yet? The British proposals have led to 3 serious concerns. First of all, the issue of the border and checks on goods on the island of Ireland. Prime Minister Johnson has always been very clear in rejecting the backstop, which is a sort of insurance, a safety net that we had come to an agreement with Theresa May's government. So that's one point. Prime Minister Johnson acknowledges that regulatory alignment for goods is necessary between Northern Ireland and the EU. We agree on this point. But in order to resolve the issue of customs checks, the UK is simply proposing that together in the protocol, in the international treaty that we will have between us, simply to take measures so that we avoid any kind of physical infrastructure or checks on the border between Ireland and Northern Ireland. Obviously, we also want to achieve this objective. This is one of the objectives of the backstop, to avoid having this border or this infrastructure on the border. But what we're being asked for in reality is to accept a system that hasn't been properly developed, that hasn't been tested. There'll be controls spread out across Ireland, and it will largely be based on exemptions and derogations on technology that has yet to be developed, changes to international law through the Common Transit Convention, and a new compliance system, but with none of the guarantees that should be set out in this protocol. Ladies and gentlemen, what we need when it comes we need to have the integrity of the single market and the customs union, and at the borders we need to have proper, rigorous checks all along our external border, along the external border of the single market. In Northern Ireland, as in any other area, we need operational, real controls, credible controls. We're talking about the credibility of the single market here, its credibility to consumers, to companies, and of course third countries that we negotiate agreements with. Let's not forget them. So that's the first point of disagreement. Secondly, what we need to find are legally operational solutions. Through the protocol, we established a safety net which clarified the regime that would be applied in Ireland. This safety net is something which is legally operational because it would be in force until we found a deal or an alternative solution. By choosing to take away that safety net, by taking away the backstop and looking for alternative solutions during the transit period, so later on, the British proposal does not give us that same security, that safety net we have in the backstop. There are no real solutions for SMEs, for example, in the British alternative proposal, apart from a general derogation. Secondly, what would happen if we have this joint committee set up as the British wish, where we would send all of these issues that can't be resolved? What would happen if this joint committee can't find a solution during the transition period? The solution would then depend on the adoption of unilateral measures that would be taken by the UK or by the European Union. There would, of course, then be a significant risk to the integrity of the single market, because the UK proposals would want us to have no checks whatsoever between Ireland and Northern Ireland, which are going to become two different jurisdictions. The third point of disagreement, as things currently stand, is the British proposal on consent. We have found it a very regrettable situation that Stormont has been suspended over the last 2.5 years without them having a full voice in our negotiations. We have set out mechanisms together with the British to ensure representation of Northern Ireland. We are looking at a more important role for the Northern Irish institutions to ensure that the Good Friday Belfast Agreement is respected. Unfortunately, the British proposal, as it stands, simply has the implementation of the protocol based on a unilateral decision from the Northern Irish authorities, who could decide right from the very start, so the day after the ratification of your assembly for the withdrawal agreement, the Northern Irish authorities could unilaterally decide simply not to activate the proposed solution for Northern Ireland. Even if it were to be implemented, every 4 years they could call this into question. Ladies and gentlemen, members of Parliament, the proposal of the British government, as things stand, is not something we can accept. It replaces an operational, practical, legal solution by one that is simply a temporary solution. There are other issues which are of concern, not with the withdrawal agreement, but with the political declaration, which goes alongside and is very important because it describes the steps that will follow after Brexit. We hope with a deal, but even without a deal, we will have to rebuild everything that has been pulled apart. 44 years of integration and cooperation. We will have to rebuild our relationship in all these different areas: trade, university, aviation, fisheries, judicial cooperation, security. We are trying to set out what this future relationship will look like together with the British government in this political declaration. The Prime Minister is asking us to simply focus on a very basic free trade agreement and no other options which we had left open in the political declaration. He's also asked us to take out references which we'd agreed with Theresa May on a very important point, which is the level playing field. So having some basic rules in place. A basic sense of fairness, of loyalty, of rules for labour, for the environment, for consumer protection. So that is what we're being asked to do. So this is the request that we have, and what that leaves us is the risk of having just a very basic free trade agreement where there is regulatory competition, perhaps social dumping, environmental dumping, tax dumping. So on this particular point, I think when we look at our future free trade agreement with the UK, that is going to have to be proportional in terms of the commitment made by the British government to have a fair and level playing field. I don't think anyone in London or anywhere else should be surprised that the EU is committed to getting operational, legally sound and sustainable solutions in this agreement. Why? Well, it's very simple. Brexit, when it happens, that is something that's long-term. I have been saying this for 3 years now. Brexit is creating specific, serious problems, first and foremost in Ireland. So when we deal with these very immediate, serious and specific problems, what we need is today operational, legally binding solutions, not tomorrow, not in the future, and they need to be solutions for both parties here. So in this moment where we are now, we will remain calm, we will remain vigilant, and we will remain constructive, and we will be respectful of the United Kingdom and those who lead it. That is our approach, and we hope with this attitude on both sides, we will be able to come to an agreement that works for everyone. My team, our team, will be permanently cooperating with the European Parliament, with the Brexit steering group. I would like to thank in particular Guy Verhofstadt. And together with all of the member states, we will be available 24/7 in the upcoming days to try and reach an agreement. That is the approach I will take when I meet the Minister Steve Barclay tomorrow. I will very carefully respect my mandate as was given to me. Also bear in mind the resolutions taken by the European Parliament, which are also very important for me. So we will continue to work in that vein. Even though it might be very difficult for all of the reasons I've previously enumerated, I think if there is goodwill on both sides, an agreement is still possible. Thank you.
Grazie.
Thank you, Mr. Barnier. We will now hear the views of the political groups. Mr. Weber, the leader of the European People's Party group. Of course, at this stage of the debate, we can't take any blue card requests. Mr. Weber, you have the floor.
President Sassoli,
President Juncker, Mr. Barnier, President in Office of the Council, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I'd like to express a vote of thanks for you having mentioned the victims in Halle and expressing condolence there. It was an attack on Jewish lives on German soil. And for anybody, but especially for me as a German, it is shocking to hear that. So thank you, first of all, for having condemned this horrific crime that's been committed. I'd like to thank the police as well, anti-Semites, and anybody who wants to question freedom of belief are not just our opponents, they are our enemies. Everybody here is called on to stand up and say no to anti-Semitism. Mr. President, we're preparing for the European Council, so first of all I'd like to pick up on some of the main messages that Jean-Claude Juncker has put out. People are expecting clear answers to the questions being raised at this juncture, and at this very time there are many mayors and ministers in Brussels, because the Committee of the Regions is here. People are asking questions: how are we going to continue with our funding with the MFF? Can we still fund projects that are meant to be going on the ground? There's a lot hanging on the MFF, and we in the EPP expect that at this summit there will be
progress made. I'd like to thank the Finnish presidency for the headway that has been made, but the bosses will have to make sure that things get done. We have to be clear that the MFF discussion is not one about a percentage. It's not about that figure. The MFF discussion is a discussion about the political projects that we want to see implemented. And if certain countries in the European Union insist to carry on solely talking about the percentage, then we have to hold up to them that what we would achieve with that percentage means we will not be able to have a master plan for Africa, we will not be able to strengthen Frontex, we'll not be able to attack the fight against cancer in any serious matter. We won't be able to achieve what we're asking ourselves to do, and we'll have to start cutting money for projects that are being planned. So we need clarity on all of these points, so I hope the Council will make efforts to reach a conclusion there. Secondly, presumably the main topic of discussion will be Brexit. And first of all, it's not the question of the content that I'd like to dwell on, because Jean-Claude Juncker and Michel Barnier enjoy our full support, and would like to thank them in trying to keep Europe together and setting out the clear lines. And they can count on our support in future as well, and I think they're aware of that. What concerns me more is the style that we've heard of debate. Yesterday, a telephone conversation between Angela Merkel and Boris Johnson, and this blame game was happening. People pointing the fingers, making no headway. We have to ask, what is going on? What is going on in our foundations when party politics becomes more important than the interests of a country? And I think that's what the negotiations ought to have been about. The idea of Boris Johnson not to have discussions in the chamber, not to look at the initiatives that Mr. Juncker has come up with, but basically the proposals Boris Johnson had about Brexit were presented at the Tory party conference. So it's not about having decent discussions with partners, it's about scoring political points. And I think when it comes to serious policies, it's important that we bring together interests rather than splitting a country. Ladies and gentlemen, another topic the EPP is concerned about is trade policy. Maybe I can just touch on the fact that we have WTO decisions to take between the US and the EU. I hope things will work out. We'll find a common way that will not lead to a trade war, because a trade war would please others, but certainly not the EU and not the US either, and that's why we need to extend a hand of friendship to try and resolve these conflicts. A final comment on the issue of Turkey, which is something we'll have to deal with. The list is getting longer and longer. Illegal immigration is increasing, and it seems that the Turkish authorities are not putting paid to that. We have problems in Syrian waters where illegal activities are going on, smugglers and traffickers. We also see that there's a form of a backstop solution being applied there that is bringing in illegal products to the European market. We have military activities which are extremely concerning, where we know that the Kurds who are fighting IS and are helping us, now there are problems there, and also general concerns about freedom of the press in Turkey. So we certainly hope that Turkey can be seen as a partner, and that this partnership with the EU is taken seriously by them. But also we need to look at the good economic relations between the European Union and Turkey can be maintained in the long term if Turkey becomes a partner who's more concerned with violence than partnership. We are prepared to maintain partnership, but Turkey has to understand that if they don't want partnership, there will be consequences.
Thank you. Ms. Garcia Perez, on behalf of the group of Socialists and Democrats, the floor.
Thank you very much, President. Our next European Council meeting is going to be debating a series of key challenges for the EU. The next multi-annual financial framework, Brexit, and of course climate change. We are trying to create a closer Europe between our peoples, but this will only be possible if we can have a sound financial framework. The Parliament will be voting on a resolution tomorrow which will affirm our commitment to our priorities and our commitment to the 2021-2027 upcoming financial framework. It is key to have additional financing so that we can stick to these commitments that have been taken by the President-elect of the European Commission and to ensure a fair environmental transition. We have been waiting for almost a year to take up negotiations with the Council. All that time we have wasted. So I hope we can take up negotiations as soon as possible for the next MFF. This financial framework is decided through co-decision. That means we will not accept any attempts by Council to undermine the prerogatives of the European Parliament. We will also not adopt the next MFF if we do not have an agreement beforehand on the reform of the own resources system of the European Union. We need an ambitious budget. That's the only way that the EU can achieve the objectives of its strategic agenda from 2019 to 2024. Within the framework of the strategic agenda, the heads of state and government have a responsibility to urgently deal with the upcoming priorities. Developing the European social pillar, that's a real priority if we want to make any progress towards a fairer Europe. We also need to reform the Dublin system in terms of asylum and migration. We need to incorporate the Sustainable Development Goals into the European semester. We also need a climate neutral Europe by 2050. Our banking union, tackling tax fraud, all of these are important to ensure that fair contributions are made to strengthening a Europe of well-being and prosperity. If we commit to these priorities, we can finally tackle the populist dialogue that only negatively impacts our continent, that uses patriotism as a weapon rather than the defence of a common good. This is the same type of narrative we hear from Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Great Britain was a leader and has now become a country of ignorance. We will not accept replacing the protocol with regards to Northern Ireland instead of the backstop. Let's be clear, the Social Democrats will only support a proposal that avoids any kind of border between Ireland and Northern Ireland. Any type of solution should not be one that calls into question the integrity of our single market, our consumers or our companies. Our political family is firm on this point, as we said in the previous plenary when we adopted this resolution. We would accept an extension to Article 50 to avoid a no-deal Brexit because we feel this would be negative for all of us. Let's be very clear, all of us, for Europe, for the UK and for all our citizens. There are certain points which are really key at the moment. Tackling climate change. The recent summit on climate change in New York made it very clear that the EU can be a real leader here, which is sorely needed. Tackling climate change and complying with the Paris Agreement and meeting the Sustainable Development Goals are all vitally important for the European Union and for developing countries to be able to tackle the devastating economic, social and environmental consequences which are caused by human activity. If we can consistently apply our internal and external policies and have a strong financial framework in order to put in place adaptation and mitigation measures, this is going to help us reduce global warming. On the 17th and 18th of October, there is a real opportunity for the heads of state and government of the European Union to resolve these problems ahead of us. The European Parliament is ready. It's now in your hands.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Cioloș, the leader of the Renew Europe group, you have the floor.
Mr. President Sassoli, Mr. President Juncker, Mr. Michel Barnier, Madam Minister, ladies and gentlemen. We, the Council, will have again on the agenda the Brexit issue. Indeed, I welcome the fact that the UK government finally produced some proposal last week. But I am also very concerned about their content. We have always been open to workable and legally operable solutions. But let's be clear, as they currently stand, they cannot be the basis of an agreement. As they currently stand, we will not and cannot support them. Any new UK proposals need to respect the Good Friday Agreement, protect our citizens and the integrity of the single market. We have grave concerns about the UK proposal, not least fuelled by the latest recrimination arriving from London. This is not and should never be a blame game. We still have time to avoid a no-deal situation that would be catastrophic. On parlant maintenant du budget, qui est aussi...
Talking about the budget, which is also on the Council's agenda, we have to have clear prospects in terms of the direction of travel we want to give to Europe. The European budget is really what we're talking about there. It's really a direction of travel for Europe, not just figures. Let's not forget that our electorate and our citizens expect of us that we deliver on the agenda that we undertook to implement this July. We need political prospects, but also budgetary prospects. The European budget is not just figures. It's a political vision, a vision of the added value that Europe can provide. And it is the time for us to say that we are assuming this project. We want to take on this project. And if we want to do that, then we have to have the right resources, and we must have own resources. Let's not avoid that debate. There's a question of splitting the responsibility between own resources and the contributions from member states to assume what needs to be done. President Sassoli, before the Council, you'll be giving the Parliament's position, and it will be a strong position, and we need this because Europe needs a strong position too.
Thank you. Mr. Lambert, on behalf of the Greens EFA Group.
So goes the story. A good-willed British Prime Minister is honestly seeking a balanced solution to the Brexit conundrum. But he's confronted with a hostile and antagonistic, inflexible European Union, conspiring with traitors back home, concentrated into the British Parliament and the judiciary, whose sole aim would be to frustrate the will of the people and surrender to the enemy. The reality, this is the story that Prime Minister Johnson wants to tell. The reality is that Prime Minister Johnson does not want a deal. Listen, if we were to sign the British proposals, we would commit forever to keep a 500-kilometre stretch of EU external border with no controls forever, without any firm guarantee that goods crossing that border would match the EU regulatory standards, notably safety, security, right? And with no guarantee that the custom tariffs would be paid. That is the kind of blank check that the Prime Minister Johnson wants us to sign. No jurisdiction in the world would ever accept this, especially from a neighbour whose stated intention, has been repeatedly said, is to undercut the European Union's social and environmental taxation standards. No one would accept this. But you understand, these proposals are not there to be accepted. They are meant to lead the country to a no-deal Brexit for which the EU27 could be blamed. It's not hard to read into Prime Minister Johnson's game, and it depends on all responsible women and men within the British Parliament to prevent this from happening and to muster their collective strength to put the interest of the country front and centre. Now, dear friends, I will just say one thing. We are all members of Parliament here, and we are proud of this. I listened to Prime Minister Johnson's speech to the Tory party conference the other day. Few days after having illegally attempted to close down its parliament, that Prime Minister was openly mocking, humiliating, deriding the parliament from which his own legitimacy derives. Dear friends, when chiefs of the executive in any country trample like this on parliaments, what is at stake is democracy. Thank you.
Grazie.
Thank you, Mr. Lambert. Mr. Bay, you have 1 minute, each of the ID group. Thank you, President. Mr. President, Mr. Barnier, you're saying no to Boris Johnson's proposal, but you're also saying you're against no deal. You refuse the British government's position, although clearly it's one which is balanced and would make it possible at one and the same time for the UK to leave the European Union and the customs union. The democratically expressed wish of the British people 3 years ago now, while at the same time it respects the Good Friday Agreement. You are presenting the backstop you negotiated with Theresa May against the British people as a safety net, but you know very well it's a lot more than that. In practice, it means it's a way of keeping the UK in all the mechanisms of the European Union with the same financial contribution as ever. And the situation could be if the thorny issue of the Irish border remains. You know this is unacceptable to the British people and the majority in the House of Commons. It will lead to a blockage that you will be responsible for. In the context of the multi-annual financial framework to be debated at the forthcoming Council meeting, there are two stumbling blocks. First of all, an inflation of expenditure, the EU spending more and more all the time, and ever further away from the concerns of the people of Europe as expressed at the most recent European elections, and at the same time this idea of own resources and European taxation, which would not replace national taxation but would be supplementary to it, increasing the fiscal burden even more. And lastly, Mr. Macron, amongst the heads of state, and Mr. Timmermans in the Commission both recently expressed the idea that the so-called rule of law would determine access to community funds. Just follow my raised eyebrow. Clearly this is geared towards peace and law and justice in Poland and Fidesz in Hungary. The countries with the largest majorities in elections, those with the strongest democratic legitimacy, which the Commission should therefore respect, given they'll never have that democratic legitimacy. And this at the very time when the European Union refuses to make aid granted to African countries subject to them getting a handle on migratory flows. They're trying to pillorise these countries and deny them resources they are perfectly entitled to because supposedly they were failing to respect what they call the rule of law, which is something which, in fact, they're using as a political instrument. The President. Thank you, Mr. Fito, Co-President of the European Conservatives and Reformers Group. Thank you, President. I listened carefully to previous speakers, as well as Mr. Juncker, the President of the Commission, and other representatives. Now, the starting point is this. Not much has been said about enlargement, however important it has been. What about the very important issues that we face now, very serious emergencies? I've heard political considerations. I've heard comments from a parliament where in the steering group in the previous parliamentary term, they regard themselves as a point of balance for Parliament's proposal. There are political groups there who have been deliberately squeezed out without any objective reason for doing that. Although they should be part of a decision they will obviously be affected by. So your starting point should be this. We've heard today what Mr. Barnier had said regarding the complexities of the position, but there's something unavoidable. We have to find an agreement with the United Kingdom, and that means that we must continue to have strong economic and social relations with the UK. That's why it's unacceptable that some feel it's still acceptable to insult the Prime Minister of a country. You may not agree with his position. You may not be happy with the agreement, but you need to find an agreement. Because the point is this country has a government. Maybe some of the political groups in this House don't like it, but until any evidence to the contrary is forthcoming from elections, this is a government which has legitimacy for its decisions, and that warrants the respect of the component parts of this Parliament. Now, on the multi-annual financial framework, may I say very clearly that we need to speed up our work. It's particularly important to have a clear time frame for solutions without increasing fiscal pressure, because that will have an impact on the future work of the Commission. Much has been said about the struggle on climate change. Well, we don't want extreme positions to be our starting point. We should start from the need to adapt our productive system, our industrial system in Europe. There's an undoubted need for that. Lastly, migration hasn't been mentioned at all. The meeting of Home Affairs Ministers in Malta came up with all sorts of announcements. I'll say no more on that. But just yesterday, we've heard that for the umpteenth time, people are not practicing what they preached. So we need some palpable responses to this crisis. The President, thank you, Mr. Fito. Mr. Schildervan now for the European United Left Group.
Thank you very much, President. At a request of my group, we will be talking about the Turkish attack on Syria later this evening. I think it sends out a clear message about human rights violations by Turkey against the Kurdish people in the north of Syria. Let me come on to the other urgent political issues before us. Brexit. We have said there would be an agreement to an extension if such an extension were to be requested. We're just waiting to see if they will comply with British law and ask for such an extension in the coming days. Council will then have to make a decision. We hope they will grant such an extension, because a hard Brexit crashing out in this way would mean very serious consequences for all of us. There would be tough political questions such as how to protect the peace process in Northern Ireland and how to protect the social rights of millions of Europeans. These responses have not been given yet to all of these open questions. Colleagues, there are also more positive things that are happening in British politics. We're talking about Extinction Rebellion here, something that's been successfully exported around the world. We see it in Amsterdam, in London, in Paris, and in a number of European cities. So in light of COP25 in Santiago de Chile, I think that we in the European Parliament need to maintain a policy that really tackles this urgency of climate change. So we would call on the Commission and the Council. This is something that has to be done now and has to continue to be EU policy. We need to look at the Paris Agreement, the Sustainable Development Goals. Just a small change of topic now on the MFF. We want to see this money being given out for sensible projects. We should be closing tax loopholes that exist, and with that extra funding we could take it, we could invest that in socio-environmental projects, we could create quality jobs, we could deal with the digital transformation, we could tackle inequalities, climate urgencies, rather than the increasing militarisation of the EU. And then hopefully you can keep your promises in the future, Mr. Juncker.
Thank you. Mr. Lucy from the non-attached members, you have 1 minute.
Thank you much for the floor. Let me make this very clear, Mr. Sassoli. You have no right to go and speak with the UK Speaker, having conversations that are directly interfering into our domestic politics. It exposes your intentions to intervene at all levels to stop Brexit. It is immoral. Shame on you. And Mr. Barnier, I note throughout your speech, sir, you kept referring to the British negotiators as just British. We are the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and that will never change. Brexit was not a rejection of Europe or our wonderful European friends. It was a rejection of the anti-democratic nature of EU institutions, and you confirm to us every day it was right to leave. Thank you.
Madam Hübner, please.
Thank you very much, President, dear colleagues. I understand that the political situation in the UK is, to say the least, challenging. However, it must be clear that the proposal that came from the United Kingdom, long awaited by the EU, that might lead to an orderly Brexit, has not met our expectations. We hope to see a legally operational alternative to the backstop that would deliver on all its objectives. As Michel Barnier has rightly said, the proposal raises fundamental concerns. In this House, we will not accept a return to a hard border in the island of Ireland. We will not accept distortions to the all-island economy. We will not accept risks to the integrity of the single market. And we cannot either accept replacing the legally operational backstop by a vision of a solution that might or might not come at the end of the transition period. We regret a lack of transparency at this stage of the negotiations on the British side in a moment when the third Brexit deadline is around the corner. The negotiating team has shown an enormous amount of flexibility over the last years and is prepared to work around the clock to find a deal, so there is still a chance. But a significant movement from our British friends is needed. But I'm not convinced anymore, as many of us here, that the UK government wants a deal. So let me finish underlining that this unprecedented political process of Brexit continues to have a massive negative impact on citizens' lives. And in this context, let me say that negotiating future relationships should not be allowed to start before citizens' rights are legally guaranteed. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Bonafé, for 1.5 minutes.
Thank you, President. A lot has been said about Brexit, as is only right and proper, but I'd like to remind you that under the other items on the Council's forthcoming agenda, there's climate change and the international agreement. I'd like to focus on that. Following the recent New York summit at the United Nations, COP25 will be held in Santiago in December. We welcomed the success of the Paris Agreement with global commitments to keep the temperature rise below the critical level of 2 degrees, but it has to be said that we're far from achieving that. The Environment Council itself has said that with current commitments and current greenhouse gas emissions, we're not going to be in a position to fulfill that undertaking. But to be effective, there has to be proper international coordination, and the context is not at all encouraging. The Trump administration's note have been followed by worrying positions regarding the deforestation of the Amazon from the President of Brazil, Mr. Bolsonaro. What a European leadership that we've wielded in recent years to tackle the environmental crisis. The figures unavoidably show that we can make significant change on the climate change front on a sustainable, balanced basis if we adapt our productive systems commensurately, and the decisions taken by our heads of state and government in the next few months will be vital in that regard.
Thank you very much, and I want in fact to start by responding to Mrs. Delucy, who is attacking here this parliament, saying that we are undemocratic, while they are here elected here, and they are not elected in the British Parliament. So who is more democratic, you think? Who is more democratic? In your own country, neither in the UKIP, before or Brexit, has one representative in the British Parliament. And here, where you have more than, I don't know, too much representatives. You're saying that we are not democratic. Crazy is this. But that said, I will be less diplomatic than Michel Barnier. I think that the proposal that Boris Johnson exactly 1 week ago has put forward was not serious at all, dear colleagues. Not serious at all, because it was, in fact, I call it a virtual proposal. It was not a real proposal. It gives, in fact, a veto to the DUP in a number of issues. It is putting custom facilities, not on the border between Northern Ireland and the Irish Republic, but in all the other parts of the island of Ireland that we don't know yet. And finally, the proposal is to downgrade the political declaration and the future relationship by undercutting, in fact, by making a sort of Singapore at the sea, at the North Sea, like they like there behind me, these 20, but by, in fact, destroying the ecological, social and labour standards. And I have to tell that to Richard Corbett, because he's a Labour representative. I can never understand that today there are 20 or so Labour MPs thinking to vote together with the government of the UK for such a deal. That should be the contrary of all the things that Labour has always defended in the past. And okay, I hope that it is not happening. But the real reason why this is all happening is very simple. It's a blame game. A blame game against everybody. A blame game against the Union, against Ireland, against Mrs Merkel, against the British judicial system, against Labour, against the Lib Dem, even against Mrs May. The only who is not be blamed is Mr Johnson himself, apparently. But all the rest are the source of our problems. That is what is happening today. And all those who are not playing his game are traitors, or a collaborator, or surrenders. Well, in my opinion, dear colleagues, the real traitor is he or she who risks bringing disaster upon his country, its economy and its citizens by pushing Britain out of the European Union. That's, in my opinion, a traitor.
Mr Verhofstadt, you have provoked two colleagues who have blue card questions, only two. The first that we caught was, I'm trying to read the word, Martin Edward Dobnet. Will you accept the question? So the floor is yours, Mr Dobnet, for 30 seconds.
Dad, I would like to ask you why you don't respect democracy. You claim to respect democracy. You just said you don't think that the Labour Party should be allowed to vote with our Conservative Party. Why not? That is their democratic right. And do you remember how you opposed the fact that Turkey wanted to throw a new election because you didn't agree with the first one, yet you want us to throw a second referendum in the UK? Mr Verhofstadt, you do not believe in democracy, except when it suits you and except when you win. And when you lose, as you did at the European referendum and the Brexit referendum, you just don't like it, do you? I'm afraid you've lost, my friend. Goodbye.
I'll try and keep it to 30 seconds, so I'm sure, Mr Verhofstadt, you will confine your answer to 30 seconds, please.
The mic appears not to be working.
Democracy, you can change your mind. And I have this, no? Yeah. And I have only a small impression. I have a small impression that in the meanwhile, the majority of the British citizens have changed their mind.
Sorry, colleagues. Please listen to the answer and try not to holler. There's no need for it. Mr Corbett, I think in fairness I will ask, will you accept a question, Mr Verhofstadt? You're in demand.
Like
Mr.
always.
Corbett.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Democracy.
30 seconds.
Curiously, Madam President, Mr Verhofstadt asked me a question during his speech about a small number of Labour MPs who've written to President Tusk urging a deal and compromise which they might vote for, not this deal by Mr Johnson. But another way to stop Mr Johnson, of course, would be to vote no confidence in the House of Commons and put Jeremy Corbyn in number 10. But it's the Liberal Democrats who are opposed to that. They say they'll do anything to stop Brexit, but they won't even put Jeremy Corbyn in Downing Street as a temporary government.
I'm sorry,
for 5
Mr.
weeks.
Corbett, it wasn't a question. I'm not sure, Mr. Verhofstadt, can you make a question out of a statement?
Make it into a question, but I don't think that it is in this House that we have to discuss the internal affairs of the Labour Party and the British Parliament.
Okay, you have succeeded in irritating both sides of the House, Mr. Verhofstadt, so it's a balance. Although I have to say, as I said, indeed, that was my remark, incredibly balanced. So calm down to my right, please. Our next speaker for 1 minute is Madam Chowns. Thank you.
Colleagues, let's focus on common ground, shall we? For the third time this year, my country is looking over the cliff of a no-deal Brexit. But the difference is that this time, our own UK Prime Minister is trying to drag us, kicking and screaming, over that cliff, against the wishes of the large majority of UK citizens, and while trying to place the blame on anybody but himself. But nobody is fooled, not in this House and not back home. We know that the EU has been bending over backwards, actually,
Excuse
to avoid...
me, Madam, really, just a second. Can I just say to my right honourable friends, could you stop the tittering and giggling and pay respect to the speech, even if you disagree with it, because it's really very childish, the behaviour at the moment. So, Madam, will you please continue, and I hope you'll get the respect of the House. Thank you.
Thank you. We know that the problem is not in the EU, but in number 10 Downing Street. UK citizens are now raising their voices loud and clear. Young people, especially, are calling on us to remember, all of us, it is their futures that hang in the balance here. We must hear their voices. Colleagues, we are all tired of Brexit, but we know Brexit will not be over if there's a no deal. It will just be the start of years more painful negotiations because we have to have a deal one way or the other in the end. There is a way forward. We need more time so that when the Brexiteers finally between themselves agree on what a deal is, that deal goes back to the people so that they can have the final say in a people's vote. Thank you.
Thank you. For 1.5 minutes, Mr. Moyton.
Frau Präsidentin.
Madam President, President Juncker, Mr. Barnier, maybe I could just address a different side of things. I'm somewhat disappointed about what was said concerning the telephone call between Ms. Merkel and Mr. Johnson. I did hear Ms. Merkel said that there would be no problem if they were to leave, but for the UK, according to the Chancellor, there are different rules that should apply. The UK, she says, can leave if Northern Ireland is left for eternity in the customs union. So basically, Merkel would like to divide the United Kingdom. So you wouldn't have a united kingdom, you'd have a disunited kingdom. I find that approach absolutely incredible. From Miss Merkel, who grew up in a in a country that was divided, I would say in good British English, how dare you? We know that no deal is possible if you're going to undermine the independence of the UK. Now, maybe you should look at the border between Norway and Sweden. That's perfectly possible in negotiations, or if you were to extend the Article 50, maybe we could draw solace on that. Let us be honest, finally, and accept that the EU institutions should do everything to they're actually doing everything to stop the UK making an orderly exit. And we're actually also pointing the finger at the UK and blaming them. Of course, the UK, if it is to kowtow to the EU's demands, there won't be an orderly exit. And in political terms, once they do leave, I think it will be a liberation for them.
Mr. Church.
Buenas tardes, gracias, Presidenta.
Good afternoon. Thank you, President. The moral superiority and arrogance we've heard from the Socialists and Democrats leads those of us who are firm proponents of the European Union rather apprehensive. We believe in sovereignty and subsidiarity, but nonetheless we believe in the European Union. But we're dumbstruck by what we've heard from Mr. Verhofstadt, for example. He appears to have no respect whatsoever for the views of anyone who begs to differ from him. This swagger is a constant when a country has expressed its views and asked to leave the European Union. Another example of arrogance when we talk about the climate is this moral superiority certain radical groups are asserting, who have been whipped up by the media and the European Union itself indeed, to try and impact on the daily lives of ordinary people, blocking streets, stopping people going about their daily business. There's a danger of radicalisation here being fed into by the European Union, and we have to be very careful about this. Just think of what happened with previous processes of radicalisation.
1 minute, Ms Anderson.
On the 29th of April 2017, the European Council sent a strong message to the people of Ireland. EU heads of state said, in accordance with international law, the entire territory of such a united Ireland would thus be part of the European Union in the event of Irish unification. The constitutional setup in the north of Ireland rests on continued consent. Opinion poll after opinion poll shows that Brexit has evaporated the consent for the north to remain connected to Britain. The British Secretary of State has both the discretion and the duty to call a unity referendum if it appears that a majority would likely vote for Irish unity. Every recent opinion poll shows that there is a majority favouring reunification. Tonight in this Parliament, Professor Colin Harvey and barrister Mark Bassett will launch a report at 7 p.m. on the role of the EU and Irish unity, planning and preparing for constitutional change in Ireland. This is the sensible solution to the Brexit mess, both for Europe and for Ireland. Thank you all.
For 1 minute, Mr. Lagos.
It is the right of its people to make their own decisions. I am really astonished by the fact that within this room and without you are trying to change the result of a referendum. The same thing happened in my country, in Greece. When we carried out a referendum, and according to that we said that we did not want to stay in the EU anymore and we did not want the memorandum. However, you overrode us and led us to destruction. And then we have the declarations of Mario Draghi, of Christine Lagarde, of Paul Thompson, and they admit to their mistakes. Who is going to pay for those mistakes? Because they've been paid by thousands of families in my countries. There are people going hungry, there are people that have killed themselves, and all you are doing is going on about theories. Let the British people take their own decisions and not go through what we went through. And one more thing, I would like to say a thing concerning the hypocrisy of most of the people in this room and the Turkish invasion in Syria. Well, how dare they bomb innocent people? You are sitting here and talking, and the Turks have really reached a new low. This has to stop. You need to stop helping Turkey.
As you know, colleagues, we are running behind schedule and there is an extension to our agenda for this evening. So please try and respect the time and make your point in the first minute rather than the second, especially if you only have 1 minute. I do believe there is a blue card request. Madam Grappini would like to put a question to you, sir, if you're listening. Mr. Lagos? He's not listening, so I think we'll just leave it at that.
Yes. Yeah.
You will accept a blue card question?
Yes,
reverse. Madam Grappini, will you please confine it to 30 seconds? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. Dear colleague, of course, I agree that member states need to decide their own fate, but how about the citizens? Do they have rights? And according to the latest British polls regarding what the citizens think, and they believe that they were misled, they were told that nothing will happen after Brexit, that they will have the same rights with no obligations. Do you know the results of the latest polls in the UK?
Sir, you have 30 seconds.
I think that the people in Britain have not changed their minds, but I cannot understand when a referendum is valid for you and when it isn't. I mean, this thing took place a couple of years ago. Why hasn't it been realized yet? Are we going to wait until you pressure them enough to change their minds? The referendum took place, they made a decision, and according to democratic logic, it should be accepted.
Our next speaker for 1 minute is Madam Győri.
Thank you, President. 3 gondolatot szeretnék megfogalmazni 3 témakörben kimondottan nem.
Thank you very much. I won't specifically refer to Brexit, but I want to talk about the MFF. The deal that we have on the table is less money to try and achieve more in more difficult circumstances. I would like to draw the attention of the Finnish presidency to this. It's a nonsense to try and fulfill all these requirements with the money that you have. Makes normal operations just impossible. You can't to achieve more with less money in this way. And secondly, I want to touch on climate change. All citizens in Europe believe that the green economy is important, but we need realistic targets. We need to try and have realistic ambitions and not just simply propose larger and larger numbers. And then thirdly, on enlargement that Mr. Juncker referred to, I think it was a mistake for us to say that there would be no enlargement in the previous period. That's against stability and prosperity, and I hope we will see positive decisions for Albania and Macedonia.
Our next speaker is Mr. Silva Pereira.
Thank you, Chair. The proposal made by Mr. Johnson is really not a convincing basis for an agreement. In a way, it looks like that Mr. Johnson is trying to sell us a very nice house with swimming pool. The only problem is that it might not have a swimming pool after all. In fact, the proposal offers a regulatory alignment of Northern Ireland with the single market. But is it a real offer? No. In fact, it depends on an unilateral consent given by the Assembly of Northern Ireland before the entry into force and thereafter every 4 years. Then the proposal says that Northern Ireland will be out of the customs union, but still we will have an open border based on alternative arrangements. But are those proposals workable? Are we, in fact, before a real offer? No. The truth is that those alternative arrangements would still have to be arranged by a joint committee. So the proposal itself is unworkable. It's not a basis for an agreement. And so now that we are approaching the Council, our resolution adopted here in the European Parliament remains valid. If no agreement is reached, then we, the European Parliament, we will support an extension of Article 50.
For 1 minute, Madam Netchinga.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. As a proud British citizen, I am ashamed of our government and the way it is treating both its citizens and democracy. Boris Johnson has misled the entire country, including our Queen. He is not to be trusted by anyone in this Parliament or in the Commission. The EU has shown great patience already, for which I am grateful. And now British politics is being recast. Boris Johnson has lost his majority in Parliament. The European election results and every opinion poll show a majority for Remain. Once Britain has an extension, a cross-party majority in the House of Commons will eject Johnson from office. We would ask you for as long an extension as possible so that a new government will be able to hold a new referendum and the UK will find a solution. And if Boris Johnson and the Brexit Party are so confident the British people have not changed their minds, why are they opposing such a confirmatory vote? The British people do not deserve to be punished for the duplicity of their current Prime Minister, and I ask you to give us as much time as possible so that we can fix this mess. Thank you.
Madam, you have provoked a blue card from one of our colleagues. Actually, we've got two blue cards. So the first on my list, if you will accept the questions. Leslie Phillips. Sorry, is that the colleague? Yes, you have the floor.
I just want to ask my colleague from the United Kingdom, talking about how she thinks that our Prime Minister can't be trusted. Her party stood on a manifesto in 2017 of respecting the referendum result. Without any recourse to the general public, they have changed that to revoking Article 50 and stopping Brexit. Hypocrisy.
Thank you.
I think it's a statement, but perhaps there is a question there somewhere. Thank you.
Thank you. In response to that, I would like to say that there is no clarity, and never was, about what type of leave was on the referendum. When we have a clarity about that, whichever type of leave is to be put to a second referendum, the people should have a choice. And in response to the revoke thing, that would be after a general election, and therefore after a clear vote to remain.
And there is a second question from Ms. Fox, Claire Fox. Do you accept? Excuse me, I'm not asking you if you accept. I'm asking the lady who would answer the question. So now that the lady will accept, you do have the floor for 30 seconds. And as you know, I'm very strict on 30 seconds. Thank you.
If you are so confident in your politics, why don't you let us have a general election? Why do you, the Lib Dems, refuse and vote against ordinary voters in the country going to the polls? You've said you won't let them do it until you've taken something off the table that you decided on their behalf, anti-democratically. You are neither liberal nor democratic, and you say you're ashamed of the Parliament. I'm ashamed that you're a British MEP.
And that's
my final
not a question, but it's a statement.
It was a question.
Actually,
is she ashamed?
Well, I'll allow you answer that, because I dare say you'll have a good answer.
I'm very ashamed of some of the things that have been put out recently by Leave.eu. On the point of our Parliament, I think our Parliament is well overdue for a general election, but to remove the UK from to crash out during the course of that election, when there seems to be a majority in the UK for Remain, would be an appalling travesty of democracy. So we must secure the extension before we have the election, and then bring it on, and we will win far more MPs, and always have done, than the Brexit Party.
We now move to our next speaker for 1 minute, Mr. Majid.
Friends, assalamu alaikum. As we all already know, Boris Johnson is a liar, a charlatan, a racist, a national disgrace, an enemy of democracy, a selfish saboteur, a puppet to an unelected bureaucrat, and as a grandma even in his own constituency says, a filthy piece of toe rag. So to Juncker and Mr Barnier and the other EU leaders, give Boris nothing and give the British people everything, especially the young. Give them your solidarity, your unwavering support, and your sincere promise that you won't ever abandon them to the fantasies of the insecure, delusional, tiny British elite that is summed up by Boris Johnson. And Madam Chair, I have constantly and frequently criticised the EU on countless occasions, and believe me, that's not going to change. But our future is here, in this Parliament. But our future is here in this parliament. This is a European Union that turned ash, smoke, hate, horror, death and destruction into an ode to joy. And my name is Majid Majid, and I'm proud to be a British, Somali, African and a European.
I am going to give the floor to colleague Mr Van Orden, who I think would like to respond to perhaps some of your language.
Madam Chairman, I'm very happy to listen to colourful parliamentary language, but not unparliamentary language. And I think we heard a string of adjectives there against the British Prime Minister, totally unwarranted, and which should be withdrawn. They're not suitable for use in this House.
I am reminded, colleagues, that we do have a rule. It's called Rule 10, and we try and have mutual respect between members and respect for the dignity of Parliament, maintenance of security and order on our premises. So I do try and ask people to be respectful to one another, even where you have difference. So perhaps our next speakers would try and live by that code. We move now to the next speaker for 1 minute, Mr Madison.
Mr Barnier. Of course, I think the next speakers are more respected for this House. Anyway, 3 weeks ago we had a similar debate like in Strasbourg. It's like a déjà vu feeling now here again. But anyway, the time runs. As soon as there is a European Council, and we still know that the legal basis for reaching an agreement is clear. Article 50 of the Treaty of the European Union is clear. It reads as follows, and I quote, "Any member state may decide to withdraw from the Union in accordance with its own constitutional requirements." Unquote. The effects of further extending the deadlines or of a no deal will result in a lose-lose situation for all sides. Not only will it create serious problems for the multi-annual financial framework for the next period, but it will almost certainly result in a hard border in Ireland. The latest deal put forward by Mr Johnson includes major concessions on the part of the UK. The EU should now show the UK the same courtesy. The EU is like a jealous lover using useless tactics to prevent the other party from leaving, but in reality, these antics only drive the ex-lover further away. I would therefore like to remind the EU of the age-old saying, if you love something, set it free, please. Thank you.
How very thoughtful. And now for 1 minute, Mr Van Orden.
Madam Chairman, may I first of all just say to our colleague Richard Corbett, the first duty of any good Democrat is to ensure that the likes of Mr. Jeremy Corbyn, an unreconstructed Marxist, should never become Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. May I also say that when President Sassoli spoke at the beginning of this debate, he was not correct when he said that there were just two options. In fact, he said extension or no deal. In fact, of course, there is a third option, and that is getting the deal done before the 31st of October. There's effectively a week left to conclude a suitable deal between the European Union and the UK. The British Prime Minister wants a deal. He's put very reasonable proposals on the table, and he's shown great flexibility. I'm not sure we've seen the same flexibility from Dublin or indeed from the EU, and it's not too late. Michel Barnier tells me there is a way. I hope and trust that this involves new thinking by the European Union. And unfortunately, over many months, the European Union has been distracted by noises off stage, unhelpful voices, often coming from the UK, and we've heard some of that this afternoon. These have given a totally false impression of the attitude of the British people and our determination to get Brexit done.
If I may refer to President Sassoli, my interpretation of his comments were that in the event of no agreement being reached, there were two choices. So I think the President was quite clear. We now give the floor to Madam Dodds for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam President. On the 31st of October, the United Kingdom is scheduled to leave the European Union. We must leave as one nation. This means that Northern Ireland will leave the single market and the customs union with the rest of the United Kingdom. Prime Minister Johnson's blueprint means that the consent of the elected representatives of Northern Ireland is rightly required to opt into some of the rules which would make trading with our neighbours in the Republic of Ireland, easier for businesses and farmers. A sensible, pragmatic way forward, honouring the UK's referendum result. This has been met with complete negativity by EU leaders. It appears that no proposal, other than tying Northern Ireland to the EU single market and customs union, is acceptable to this House, the Irish Prime Minister, or even the German Chancellor. So let's be clear again. Northern Ireland is an integral part of the United Kingdom through the consent of the people of Northern Ireland. We will not be torn out of its internal market and customs union, and we are not the EU's bargaining chip in this negotiation.
For 1 minute, Mr. Rangel.
Thank you, Chair, Presidência finlandesa, Sr. Barnier, Comissário Carlos Moedas.
Commissioners, two issues will dominate the Council's budget. First of all, the long-term budget, the multi-annual financial framework. And we should be very concerned because the Commission's proposal is a poor one. It would serve the interest of the richer rather than the poor member states. It won't provide enough for cohesion. And the Commissioner designate seems to have no will to change that, or indeed to take a Commission initiative to increase the budget, thereby enabling us to have a proper cohesion policy. And the second point is Brexit. Now, there clearly, Boris Johnson, at the moment, isn't just playing the blame game. He's trying to ensure that the European Union carries the can for the absence of a deal. We must not give way to that blackmail. Let's say to everyone in the United Kingdom, on the European side, we're very much open to an agreement, even within the short period of a week, and we're prepared to allow for an extension. The question is for there to be genuine goodwill on the part of the United Kingdom to reach that agreement.
For 1.5 minutes, Madam Peary.
Thank you, Madam President, Minister, colleagues. There are also other items on the agenda of the European Council than Brexit. It will decide on the start of the accession negotiations between the EU and Northern Macedonia and Albania. And only last week, President Tusk, President Juncker, President Sassoli and President-elect von der Leyen issued a joint letter on the opening of accession talks. Their wording was strong and their message was crystal clear. North Macedonia and Albania did what we asked them to do. The time has come to open accession talks with both countries. This is a test about the Union's ability to deliver on its promises and look to the future. The assessment for these two countries is of course different. These are two separate systems with different political contexts and distinct challenges, and every country must be judged on its own merits. But what I want to underline is that this decision is not about EU membership. It's the start of accession negotiations, which is based on an assessment made on clear benchmarks and clear deliverables. Both North Macedonia and Albania are ready to start working further difficult but necessary reforms in the years ahead. And let me remind you that this decision has already been delayed for 1 year. So let's not miss this opportunity to make our enlargement policy once again credible and predictable. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Long, for 1 minute.
Madam President, the support of the EU for Northern Ireland and the Good Friday Agreement throughout this Brexit crisis is hugely appreciated by those in Northern Ireland. We need that support now to continue. More than anywhere in Europe, Northern Ireland needs a deal if Brexit is to proceed. A deal that creates no new border infrastructure within our islands, protects our economy and respects the Good Friday Agreement in both letter and spirit. A point reinforced powerfully by Tony Blair, Bertie Ahern and John Bruton at my recent Brexit event here in Brussels. The UK Government's proposals do none of that. Instead of avoiding a border, they create two. Instead of protecting business, it creates more barriers to trade and places business in Brexiternity, an unending 4-year cycle of uncertainty as to their position in the single market. Instead of protecting the Good Friday Agreement, it places the future of the Northern Ireland Assembly, already suspended for 3 years, in further jeopardy. These are not serious proposals. The UK government wants a no-deal Brexit, but wants to lay the blame with the EU for its consequences. It is crucial that strategy does not succeed. It is vital that no-deal Brexit is avoided. Northern Ireland's people, prosperity and peace depend upon it.
Mr. Borchia, for 1 minute.
Thank you, President. Since the next meeting of the European Council will, amongst other issues, deal with the most recent developments on foreign policy, we've heard some very heated assessments of Turkey and its behaviour and its position within negotiations with the European Union. I'm referring to the naval incursion in the territorial waters of Cyprus, the umpteenth convention of the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. Now, seen from that angle, given that the July meeting of the Council took decisions that the Turkish Foreign Minister just ignored, I wonder whether the European Council, in the light of the clear inadequacy of the measures adopted up until now, and in the light of the lack of respect from Turkey towards the Union, intends to suspend all the financial assistance instruments which run at more than 4 billion in the multi-annual financial framework. I am winding up, Madam President. And given Ankara's hostility towards the Union, hasn't the time come to stop the accession process once and for all?
Thank you. Mr. Farage, for 1 minute.
We are not dealing with people acting in good faith. Yes, that means you, Mr. Barnier. You're not looking for solutions, you're looking to put obstacles in our way. You may have conned a very weak and gullible Mrs May into signing up into a new treaty from which there was no escape, but you're not conning us. We don't want your treaty in any form, even with Mr Johnson's proposed amendments. The referendum was very clear. We voted to leave the institutions of the European Union and to be free. And you know, we've had enough of being talked down to by you, insulted by Messrs Tusk and indeed Juncker, and we will never accept a German Chancellor attempting to annex a part of our nation. We simply won't have it. The good news is your wretched treaty is off the table. Support for a clean break Brexit is growing, and it will be the winning ticket at the next general election.
I didn't think we were discussing the UK's next general election. I thought we were discussing Brexit. You have, of course, provoked some reaction from colleagues. Will you accept blue card question? Ms Bunting.
Am I on? Hi. Yes, the country voted, the UK voted to leave the EU, but they didn't know what they were voting on and they were misled. They were.
Could you ask a question? I don't want a statement. I'm really sorry. I need a question.
Yes, I would like Nigel Farage to account for why he stood in front of that poster with refugees that had nothing to do with European Union. I would like to ask why they supported erroneous statistics and inaccurate facts. They know
your time is up, madam. It is 30 seconds.
Thanks.
I have two other colleagues who want to ask questions, and I'm going to allow it even though we are over. So, Mr Farage, will you answer that, please?
You patronising, snuck-up snob. How dare you? How dare you tell people they didn't know what they were voting for? They knew exactly what they were voting for. They were voting against 50 years of people like you lying to them. They did it, you promised, you'd enact it, and you, the Lib Dems and others, have betrayed the greatest democratic exercise in the history of our nation.
Let that settle for a moment. Just let that settle. Can I just say I am taking a decision not to put 2 more questions to Mr Farage. I think it's the correct decision, and I now move on to our next speaker, who is Mr Peters for 1 minute.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Mr Barnier, it's clear that the summit meeting next week will be extremely important on Brexit, on that file. And I hope that common sense will prevail. But of course, it is true that there are certain movements that are giving rise to worries, and it really doesn't bode well if you see the information that we've seen. I'd like to make a point about transport. There's a lot of preparatory work that's being done in terms of air transport, rail transport, and also maritime transport, but I would just like to pick up on road transport. We are extremely concerned about this, especially if there were to be a hard Brexit, that there would be a large amount of traffic chaos that would come with that, especially if I look at Belgium and Flanders, which is extremely vulnerable on that count. Belgium, together with the European Commission, has taken an initiative. The Netherlands and France have contributed as well to inform hauliers on the problems that might crop up on the 31st of October. My question is this sufficient, or should we not take more measures to make sure that traffic chaos, especially in Belgium and Flanders, should be avoided?
Thank you. 1 minute, Madam Sippel.
Thank you very much. And I turn to Council now. At the next Council meeting, migration has not been given priority on the agenda, even though the Interior Ministers once again yesterday could not even agree to a small transitional agreement for the Mediterranean. I think when we look at the situation, the position of Commission and Council, the situation is really concerning when we look at the situation for people trying to rescue people from the Mediterranean who are being sent back to torture or repression. Is this what you describe as the European way of life? I have real concerns about our cooperation with the Libyan Coast Guard and our prosecution of those who are trying to carry out search and rescue in the Mediterranean. What we need are effective asylum procedures and a sustainable agreement with these countries of origin based on our values. That is our duty. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Keller for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam President. Minister Tuppurainen, Chief Negotiator, Mr Barnier, you have shown in no uncertain terms, Mr Michel Barnier, that the proposals coming from Boris Johnson really don't hold water. I wholeheartedly endorse the concerns expressed by my colleagues such as Naomi Long on the future of Northern Ireland. We need an agreement, but, ladies and gentlemen, not at any cost for the other 27 member states. It's the ultimate concerns of our citizens that should hold sway. And Mr Nigel Farage, maybe I can recall the fact that you resigned pursuant to the referendum, the day after, indeed. And I'd like to welcome the work of the Commission to maintain cohesion within Europe, a united Europe, open to dialogue, but firm in its intentions. I'd like to underscore that the 31st of October is fast approaching. The time to reflect on the nature of the future relationship between the European Union and the United Kingdom is something that we should do in full respect of the people of the United Kingdom.
Merci, Madame Keller.
Thank you, Mrs. Keller.
Madame Marques, for 1 minute.
Thank you, President. Mrs. Tuppurainen, Mr. Barnier. I don't want to detract from the importance of Brexit on the country, but Europeans want there to be life beyond Brexit. I'm going to talk about the multi-annual financial framework from 2021 to 2027, where running against the clock here. We must not disappoint the expectations of the citizens who place their trust in us. Parliament is prepared to negotiate on the multi-annual budget. Let us be clear about this. The Council doesn't yet have its position. It has an opportunity here, realistically, to redefine the scale and financing of the budget. The Commission's proposal is inadequate. What we need is a robust budget with a political agreement to run from the end of this year. We have a clear position. We need new own resources to finance new challenges. You must not distract from traditional policies. There has to be new money for new initiatives. We must make the most of the existing initiatives. If they're to be fit for purpose, we need a carbon-neutral, sustainable economy. Next week, all eyes will be turned to the European Council, and we look to them to give us a decision.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would ask you to keep to your allotted speaking time. We have run over by almost 50% of the time already. Next speaker, Richard Corbett.
Sorry. The British Prime Minister is indeed playing the blame game. He has tabled a proposal which he knows is unworkable, hoping that the EU will reject it so that he can blame the EU for doing so. But actually, we don't need to take the EU's word for it. Take Northern Ireland, the very territory it is supposed to help. There, the Manufacturers Association, the Retailers Organisation, the farmers, the trade unions, and every political party other than the DUP has said this proposal is unworkable for them. So we are going to come to a no-deal situation, and under British law, Johnson has to ask the European Council for an extension. I urge you to grant that extension, not just to avoid the catastrophe of no deal, but to give time to the British democratic processes, be that a general election or a referendum or both, to take place over the next few months. And they will lead. Let's not forget now, we have a minority government. Every single opposition party in the House of Commons now wants another referendum on Brexit. That will lead to the public having a final say on the actual Brexit deal on the table, and you will see the outcome may be the right one.
Thank you. Mr. Moreno Sanchez.
Gracias, Presidente.
Thank you very much, President. Ladies and gentlemen, as I said in my previous comments, we are still in time for the British to change their mind and come back into the European fold. Boris Johnson needs to be clear, though, and stop muddying the waters. Does he want a deal or simply to leave? We are prepared to deal with a no-deal Brexit. The Commission is prepared. My government has taken the necessary measures to mitigate the impacts of Britain leaving the EU and to protect the interests of citizens and companies in Spain. I hope over the next few years there will be an orderly withdrawal with a deal, but we need to be prepared. We need to continue working on our new strategic agenda. We need to agree on an ambitious MFF that's in line with the expectations of our citizens and our political objectives. We also need to ensure that Europe is a leader when it comes to tackling climate change and implementing the Paris agreements. Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we are coming now to the Catch the Eye. We have only time for 5 people. So we will start with Mr. Ruiz de Veza.
Señor Presidente. Thank you, President. Regarding the issue of Brexit, I echo the comments of my group's representative and other colleagues who've taken the floor, in particular Javier Moreno just before me. What I would like to point out, in connection with another item on the Council's agenda, namely the forthcoming multi-annual financial framework, as we have the the President in Office of the Council here, may I say to her that there's a range of programmes which are very important when we're trying to strengthen European citizenship. Erasmus+, the European Solidarity Agreement, Europe for Citizens, and also Creative Europe. So it's important for those programmes within the new multi-annual financial framework to be adequately funded. That means they need greater funding than they've enjoyed hitherto. Coming to the issue of enlargement, mentioned by the President of the Commission, may I say that we do indeed need to think through our ability to continue the process if we fail to reform the treaties to bring about deepening before we do so.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Allah. Christian.
Oui, merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, President. Yes, I am French. My name is Allard, but I represent Scotland, one of the nations in the United Kingdom, and indeed I represent them in this Parliament. Mr. Michel Barnier, I'd take advantage of this opportunity to thank you for the work that you've done to date. And I would particularly like to thank you for the respect you've shown, the courtesy you've shown, and the phlegma you've shown, the calmness. Maybe that's a value that is considered British, but it is perhaps high time that the French showed us once again what that means. Brexit isn't just about customs, but I'm changed to English.
It's about people like myself. It's about people living in Northern Ireland, in the Republic of Ireland. It's people who are married to EU citizens who live in the UK. It's about British people who are living across the EU who are married to other people. So please remember this. Anything happens, secure our rights. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dimesh.
Hello. Yeah. I just wanted to make clear that in the UK, we live in a parliamentary democracy. And that means that when a referendum result comes out, it is then advised to the parliamentarians, the MPs in Parliament, who then try and administer that result. Fortunately or unfortunately, there is no Brexit majority in the UK Parliament. Now, as far as I'm a Lib Dem, as far as the Lib Dem manifesto goes, we never have ever said that we will be putting the Brexit result and we will want to do it. I mean, we were just told that we'd put it in our manifesto. It's not true. The other thing, of course, is I would very much like Boris Johnson to carry on in government with a majority of -43, and whatever we want to do, it's like a fish hanging on a line, and we will do what we can till 2022 to not have a Brexit.
Thank you. Bourgeois.
Thank you. May I say I agree with what Mr. Barnier said, and Mr. Juncker too. The proposals from the British government will not provide an adequate replacement for the backstop. It won't give us the guarantees we need for a level playing field in the future. But no deal is the worst possible scenario, and the British Parliament has resisted the prospect of a no deal. As our colleague Mr. Corbett had said, we must do everything we can to avoid a no deal outcome. May I remind you, colleagues, that in the resolution that we adopted, the first reason we give for an extension is the prospect of no deal. So I would remind you that should no deal be found with the Council, we must do everything we can to provide an extension so that British people can give their opinions on the guarantees for the future. And following Mr. Barnier's line, up until now, this must be done in respect and dialogue.
Ms. Daly.
Thank you, President. I'm an Irish citizen. I don't want to see a hard border. I want to see the Good Friday Agreement respected, but every time I listen to Monsieur Verhofstadt, I see the arrogance of the EU institutions displayed in a manner in which I find incredibly unhelpful. But in any case, the European Council meeting is going to be discussing the strategic agenda for the next 5 years, and I have to hand it to you for the no-holds-barred approach taken to the section promoting Europe's interests and values in the world, because our government, where neutrality is incredibly important to our citizens, like to say that this is kind of about peace and apple pie, that we join up to PESCO and it doesn't really mean anything. But actually your strategic agenda is very clear about the imperial direction in which the EU is going, talking about defending the interests of the EU, the need to be more assertive, to exercise our influence, be more assertive, work with NATO, enhance our defence investment capability. Is it any wonder that the arms industry say they're our partners, not our vendors? This is an absolute disgrace. If we want to deal with the problems of the world, stop interfering and helping cause them.
Thank you. Mr. Giordano.
Mulțumesc, domnule președinte.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let me say that in this Brexit, we're not talking about left or right or politicians. We are talking about people. I come from Iași, a city in Romania, and many of my colleagues in the emergency room work in the UK, and I know how hard it is when rules come from somewhere else. We are democratically elected in the European Parliament to protect the citizens who put us here, and I would like to ask all of us here to extend Article 50 for the benefit of everyone. And despite of our political affiliation, unity in diversity should be our guiding principle. And since we're talking about the MFF, I don't think this is the solution that Europe needs right now. It is marred by inequalities, by disparities, and I would like to have regional hospitals, motorways, and money for infrastructure in my own country, but this budget does not provide for this. But because EU citizens put us here, I believe that we can find a solution together, because unity in diversity needs to be a solution for everyone, the healthy solution for everyone. Thank you very much.
Last but not least, Mr. Thijs.
Monsieur Barnier, will you please explain to this chamber and indeed the citizens of Europe why you refuse to adopt the recommendations of your own expert, Lars Carlson, in his report, Smart Borders 2, his excellent 48-page report produced in November 17, confirming that using existing technologies, existing best practices around the world, that actually you could have a friction-free border in Ireland. Why, sir, do you continue to reject that recommendation? May I put it to you? The reason is that you want to handcuff the European Union to regulatory alignment and to the customs union, because you don't want us to succeed as a high-growth, low-tax, smartly regulated country off Europe. Thank you very much.
Wir beenden die Debatte.
The debate concludes with the Council. Mrs. Tuppurainen, you have the floor.
Sehr geehrter Herr Vorsitzender,
Mr. President,
ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your very intensive debate. Many of you addressed the issue of Brexit, which is understandable, but also many of you made remarks and comments in regards of the upcoming European Council. I will convey these messages and remarks to the President of the European Council. Thank you very much. In terms of our work ahead, now that the strategic agenda has been adopted, it is time to look at how it can effectively be implemented and how we can work together to achieve our common goals. It is crucial for the EU to move ahead in key areas, particularly in terms of its future budget and on climate change, one of our most urgent threats. In addition, it is clear that Brexit is a pressing issue for leaders next week. Now, if you allow me, Mr. President, on MFF, I would just like to recall you that tomorrow in this very plenary we are going to have a debate on the next multi-annual financial framework. So we will have a perfect opportunity to exchange views on MFF tomorrow morning. And finally, on Brexit, I regret to reiterate that the UK proposal is not operational. There is therefore some serious work to do if one is to achieve a deal. But a no deal cannot be the preferred choice of the Union because of the significant consequences on citizens and businesses, even though we are well prepared. So, ladies and gentlemen, if requested by the UK, for good reason, an extension will be considered. And however urgent the Brexit issue is, we do have other issues on the Council agenda and we do concentrate on our work. So thank you very much for your attention and for this lively debate.
Thank you very much, Ms. Tuppurainen. Thank you to you, and we wish you for the meeting on the 17th and 18th of October, as with Mr. Michel Barnier, all the very best. That brings us on to the next item on our agenda, which is a Commission statement on greening the European Investment Bank. And for this debate, I would like to welcome the President of the European Investment Bank, Werner Hoyer. And before we move to the debate, perhaps I could just inform you that we still want to work with the new system where members can register their spontaneous reactions electronically and use the blue cards, but the blue cards which are raised during the Catch the Eye section are not ones that I took, because blue cards are seen as part of the discussion, as part of the debate, rather than for additional speaking time during Catch the Eye. And during the Catch the Eye procedure, I'm not going to take people who have already asked for a blue card question during the debate, because it means you've already taken the floor once. Who will get a chance to take the floor when and how is up to the Bureau and is part of the ordered debate procedure. You will have received an email on the way that we want to see this applied. The guidelines are on the table. To table a request to take the floor, you don't have to wait till the end of the session. You can actually use the voting equipment buttons if you have your voting card with you. That's the prerequisite to be able to use that voting system. So please bring your voting cards to each session. And if you want to ask for the floor for an off-the-cuff comment, you can do that immediately. You don't need to wait until the end of the debate to do that. And if you haven't used the electronic system yet, you can use the old system and still raise your blue card. So that's just by way of introduction and just to add additional clarification. Now we move to the statement by the Commission on the point on our agenda that we've broached. And on behalf of the Commission, I'd like to give the floor to Commissioner Carlos Moedas. You're welcome.
Dear President, dear members, dear President of the EIB, Werner Hoyer. First of all, a word for the people of Germany. My heart is with the Jewish community. Today is the holiest day of the Jewish calendar, Yom Kippur. And so my heart is with those that are victims of that horrendous attack. I'm here representing my colleague, the Vice President Valdis Dombrovskis, in this debate about greening the European Investment Bank. During the past years, the Commission has interacted a lot with the EIB. and notably in the context of the investment plan for Europe, and in particular in the context of the European Fund for Strategic Investments as a core part of the plan. The cooperation with the European Commission and the EIB under the investment plan has been a great success. And as a Commissioner for Research and Science, I am the witness to that. In particular, I'm so happy to see that 25% of the projects funded are related to research and innovation. The European Fund for